breaking the fake news for real. From KCOM Studios in somewhere west of New York City, this is The Fakist, and it starts now.
Hey everybody, it's Roberto Villegas. You probably haven't seen me before on any capacity or heard me before, but for those who are not aware, I am the announcer of this show. But I'm not here as capacity as announcer or even a host. Or actually, I am here as capacity as host. Let's just move on with it. We're actually going to interview all the people, or at least a good chunk of the people from The Fakist. Joining me today on this show, we have Anne Marie, Bobby Hawke, Wynn Mercere, if I pronounced that correctly, and I apologize if I did it wrong, Rebecca Johnson, and of course, Bill Meeks of The Fakist. How's it going, everybody?
Great.
Yay!
Great.
Awesome.
Hey, how's it going?
Wynn, you can feel free to correct him if you want.
Yeah, it's Wynn Mercere.
Mercere, okay.
Yeah.
It's French.
Don't feel so bad, because like for me, having a last name of Villegas, I went through life having my name butchered. Bill, maybe you can comment on this. What gave you the idea to like completely like base the fuck out of my voice and everything else? Because remember when you emailed me saying, I think you'd be perfect for the announcer. Like, okay, cool, here's my lines, not sure what to do. And then you just like, I don't know, turn like the Fox knob up to like 22, and somehow that's what at least comes out at.
Well, that's a part of it, you know. These news announcers, they're all big, boomy voice. And no offense, Roberto, but you were not big, boomy voice.
No, I don't have the spitter voice. I've never wanted to be that, like, you know, that Sunday, you know, that kind of announcer.
But, you know, outside of Rebecca, you're really the first part I cast, because I think after Paul, you're the first person who shows up in the show. And I wanted someone that I knew was solid, I could always count on to do like 3 lines in an episode.
So basically, you said, who do I know that I can at least be certain they're going to send lines back to me?
Exactly. I'm like, if nothing else, Roberto's solid. Say what you will about his hygiene, about his anime obsession, his Japan culture obsession, but he's definitely very solid when it comes to returning voiceovers in a timely manner.
Well, let's kind of talk a little bit before we start talking to everybody else, everything else, especially with you, Bill.
Okay.
How did this all come to be? Like, how is it that you started even this concept of The Fakist?
Me and Anne Marie, we hosted a bunch of mainly fan casts. We had a couple other little variety show type things, but mainly fan cast podcasts that were based around other shows. Due to a lot of reasons, we decided to stop doing them. So I was left with the question of, you know, what's next? So over the course of the 3 or 4 months after we quit all of the Universe Box podcast, I developed a couple of ideas. I had a screenplay with this metaphysical rom-com sort of idea.
I still want more of that.
Definitely. We'll get there. But then in another idea I had, because this was right around the time this whole fake news concept was kind of bubbling up in the public conscious. And I was like, well, what... You know, people are saying fake news, like these journalists are obsessed with telling the fake news. Like, I don't think an actual person like that exists. I mean, there are definitely people out there with agendas, but all of the journalists I've ever known or read a book about or whatever, they're very, very committed to their job as journalists. And I thought, wouldn't it be kind of cool to flip the script and write a story about somebody who is that committed to making shit up? And then the name popped into my head, and I was like, it was kind of like the Nerdist, so it feels kind of trendy, kind of well, maybe not so much now, but kind of trendy, kind of modern. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know, I've always wanted to do a sketch comedy show. And a news format is a really good fit for a sketch comedy show, because we can tell a story about all of the characters back in the newsroom, mainly Paul Defoe and then the people who kind of orbit around him. And then we can also cut into these sketches where it can be, you know, whatever you want, these humorous short stories. So I started there. And then, you know, as I was developing the first and second script, I kind of realized, you know, I have a complicated relationship with the truth. This might be a little bit of a spoiler for season 2, but back when I was about 8 years old or so, I was told by my parents that one of the major aspects of my life was a complete fabrication. And it fucked with me. You know, I think I had a really complicated relationship for the truth. I was a bit of a liar until I was in my early mid-20s, I'd say. Anne Marie's smiling because she's known me since I was about 20 or 19 or 20. 18. But you know, so I think because these people who I completely had to depend on and trust told me this lie, and then I found out at a very early age that they had. It kind of gave me this perspective that the truth isn't important, and maybe no one really cares about the truth, and maybe it's just about saying what you need to in the moment to get by, which is completely wrong, and I've completely turned around and stuff. But except but you know, except for the Fakist. But I started thinking about that, and I was like, wouldn't it be interesting to take this concept of a guy who is completely devoted to the untruth, to lying, and tell a story about him coming around to the other side? And that's really what the main story of the Fakist is. And then, of course, you know, we have silly things like Mr. Rogers working for Donald Trump, and in the upcoming season, Japan does Power Rangers, but for real, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, at its heart, it's really kind of a story about me learning why the truth is important and why needing to be able to trust other people is important.
That makes sense. It's interesting because I'm actually now really more curious on that lie than anything else. But I'll save my curiosity for later in every conversation.
You'll find out in episode 3 of season 2.
Coming soon.
Or no, actually episode 4. Episode 4. The fake truth.
Already lying to the audience. Correct. We're not even in 5 minutes into this. Well, let's kind of go around the horn a bit with everybody, kind of figure out, because I can kind of guess how you got hooked into this, Anne Marie, just based on relationship proximity and whatnot. So we're gonna get back to you, but we're gonna first start with let's start with Rebecca, only because I'm curious how the heck it is you got into this sphere of even doing something with Bill.
I met Bill and Anne Marie probably back in 2011, 2012. We were both doing Once Upon a Time podcasts, and we would do these round tables. And so that's how I met them as podcasters. And we kind of stayed in touch over the years. In terms of the eating, I guess you could say, is what I do. That came about, I think we did a read of one of Bill's scripts once, and I had a really good time doing that. That was a lot of fun. And then out of nowhere, Bill told me about this new project he was working on and asked me if I wanted to do a voice. And I thought he was crazy because I was like, I'm not an actress. I don't know what you're talking about. But he's a good friend. And so I thought I would help him out. And I ended up having a lot of fun. And I guess I'm okay. I'm okay at it. I'm not great at it.
No. You're amazing.
You are the show.
Well, I have a ton of fun doing it, and Bill's scripts are really funny. And so I'm just really honored and proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, I will say, too, that Rebecca's character, I wrote specifically for her. Like, there are key elements of Rebecca's personal backstory that are in her character.
Yes, I share a lot in common with Leanne. I am from Alabama. I used to work in TV news. I have worked in production. I am a University of Alabama graduate, so I am an Alabama fan. That might be important to Leanne's character traits. I'm not much of a cusser. I don't drink. So some of those quirky little things about me, Bill has put into the character. So I can definitely recognize and see myself in Leanne. So it's actually kind of easy for me to read the dialogue and play the part, because I'm sort of playing myself in a way.
That's kind of fun because, like, I don't like. I always wonder when it comes to anybody that comes into voice acting, no matter whether it be at kind of an indie project like this or a professional project later on, especially when you say, like, I'm not an actress or an actor or any of that kind of thing. I'm always fascinated with how it is that they then become their character, and it kind of helps out that Bill's writing more things that are more you than anything else.
Yeah, and it's easy for me to do the dialogue when the scripts are so solid and the comedy is very good and it's all very well written. And so I don't have to really think about it. I just drop my G's and have fun with it.
Speaking of dropping, I've dropped the check. It's in the mail. Thank you, Rebecca.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll use it wisely.
Use that Applebee's gift card really well. All right. Let's move on to Bobby, because I'm kind of curious only because of where he is broadcasting from today or recording from. How is it that you got then roped into Bill and Anne's weird project of doom? I don't know what I'm calling it this.
Don't doom it.
Actually kind of similar to Rebecca.
Like, I knew these guys. They gave me a line. I said, "Do you have? Where's the $10? Here you go."
Started listening to the Once Upon a Time podcast that they did, and around the second season, I believe, I started calling in. It just didn't stop. I just called in like every episode, and
Bobby basically became the first voicemail we'd play every week on every podcast we did.
Yeah, it's a standard part of our doc. It just says Bobby voicemail, and we get really confused if it's not there.
We're like, is Bobby okay?
Like,
yeah,
Bobby hasn't called in yet.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's very often that I'm calling it like half an hour before they go on air, sending my voicemail in. So yeah, I'm not the most prompt person. Unlike Rebecca, I guess kind of like Rebecca. I guess I too am a Vietnam pilot. Bill has definitely forced me to step outside of my comfort zone because like I don't play my voice at all on the show. I play a number of different characters. Sometimes I kind of base my voices on just like different old pop culture characters from TV land.
Like who did you base Birdman Stan on?
Mr. Oh God. Mr. Haney. I was gonna try to like I don't know. Yeah, Mr. Haney. Janitor Jim's kind of an old prospector. Just different. It's definitely forced me to step outside of my comfort zone, and like Rebecca, I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Well, that's an interesting thing, especially when you're like, for me, as sort of my role, I don't have to really do too much. I can just be me and sort of drop my voice and know Bill's going to do some effect on it, and no one will be the wiser. It's more difficult when you actually have to be a character. And I've tried those times where it's like staying in a certain voice and staying in a certain tone.
Yes.
Like you have to keep in your mind, especially if you're not used to it. Like, no, this character talks like this. I may talk this way, but the way I have to hit this accent. I have to do this, and you have to do it. Like the trick with voice acting, and I think it was, and only because it kind of at least alludes to it. I don't think Tara Strong, she's the voice of like Bubbles and
very familiar.
Twilight Sparkle, and a lot of other things. I think the way she pitched it on a show is that it's not about saying funny voices. It's about being able to do those voices consistently, which is the hardest part, I think, of any kind of voice acting.
I definitely have found that to be true. Specifically, the latest one I've been doing, because like once Bill will just be like, "Oh, here's the character I was thinking of." Like, just come up with a voice. And I usually send him kind of like a thing of like, well, here's like 3 or 4 different voices I was thinking of. So, what do you think? And he's like, "Oh yeah, we'll go with the third one." And like I said, this recent one, Janitor Jim, he was like, "All I need you to do is just record You Got It, Son." And okay. And so I did it like 3 or 4 different ways. He's like, "Okay, yeah, the third one." And then like a month later, he's like, "Okay, so here's like a page of dialogue."
and then like whole voice in a page dialogue.
Right. And then all of a sudden this voice that I had like said once in 3 words, now all of a sudden I have to speak in that voice. And it's definitely very hard to do and to keep it consistent. And
well, I will say, Bobby, I did pick that version of the voice specifically because I could hear your voice straining. And I was like, good, this will be a challenge. Let's see how he does with it.
Well, that one was definitely a challenge. I think that one specifically, besides Mr. Rogers, which I'm still... but
I thought you did a great Mr. Rogers personally.
He was dead. I'll say that he sounded weird because he came back from the dead.
I was just gonna say it wasn't a straight on imitation, but you had the vibe of Mr. Rogers.
I understand. Yeah.
Well, that's a tricky thing, and I was listening back to that that specific I guess skit today, And it's interesting because the hardest part of when it comes to doing an impression, at least from my understand, is again, when you talk about impression, it's like you have to figure out what it is of that person that's core and consistent.
Mhm.
And it's almost like taking that person and like concentrating him into this like single thing. And it's even trickier when it's like I have to do the voice of him because you have to. Because again, like you get the cadence down, you get everything down, and yes, you can tell it's not Mr. Rogers, but it's like, oh wow, it's really good. I'll be honest, I thought it was somebody else. If you had told me that was you doing it now or prior, I probably would have said like, I can't be you. And hearing you now and knowing that, like, wow, that was really good. But let's move on to the other guests here, like Wynn. I'm actually curious because we've all heard everyone else got into it by listening to podcasts, somehow being friends with it. Wynn, how did you get in this? And please tell me it's something different.
It is. I paid Bill money, actually.
Yes!
Yeah.
Many years ago, Bill was doing a gig at Dragon Con for another online pop culture news outlet, and he needed sponsors to help get him there. And I threw in $50, and ever since then, we've been best friends.
Besties.
I like the idea of like, I gave him money. We are now friends.
Hey, I'll be anybody's friend for $50.
That should be the tagline. I'll be anybody's friend for that should be Paul's
That should be a
line.
new story.
Yeah, exactly. That should be in there, Paul. Like, I'll be anyone's friend for $50.
Facebook fan page.
The Fakist Faithful Facebook fan page.
Whatever, I missed one. Continue. Sorry, Wynn.
Yeah, so continue, Wynn. So that was just it. That you just like that. But then how did it go from being friends for whatever to like, here's some lines, read them?
Well, then, like everyone else, I was following their podcasts and calling in with stupid comments about TV shows and just keeping in touch that way. And Bill decided that I could do Grace's lines in my own voice. And I said, cool, that works for me because I'm not a voice actor.
I love this. I love the idea of that, of just like, because I know what the project was. I was talking with Bill last night prior to everything, because we're kind of chit-chatting and things like that, kind of catching up. And he was mentioning that, like, yeah, one of the people, and I couldn't remember the name until today now, had kicked into that thing I did for Bleeding Cool back in Dragon Con or whatever. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's been such a long time since I thought about that moment. And it's so funny, like how it is we all came to be. Because like I was thinking in my head, like, how is it that I even came to know Bill? And I couldn't even name the moment. I couldn't even pinpoint in my head when like I met you, Bill. In terms of internet life,
I think we met through Brian Brushwood and Justin Robert Young, who have both been on the show through their podcast. It was on Twitter at the time. It was called NSFW, and Brian was arranging this big South by Southwest meetup, and I just typed in the chat room, "Man, I wish I could go. I'm Bill Meeks." 10 years ago or whatever. And and he was like, maybe you could crash on Roberto's couch and maybe that'll help you get the money to go or whatever. And so I just started talking to him back and forth. We kept interacting, through the chat room, through Twitter. And then when he started up his my so-called 8-Bit Life podcast, he asked me on, and the rest is history. It was a match made in heaven.
Yeah, because I was. And by the way, the couch is still the couch is now taken, but there is a free air mattress if anytime you want to come during South by Southwest.
Sweet. Well, dude, I'm old. My back.
Well, look, it's an air mattress. It's a queen size, dude. It's comfy. Don't diss it till you try it. But let's kind of move on. Let's move on beyond on everyone in terms of acting, because I kind of want to talk a little bit more about sort of the themes of the show, which I think is interesting as a concept, because I think like you and I were talking about this last night, Bill, in sort of before the show. But I remember you said in something along the lines of that you want to teach how to do journalism from doing it wrong, or something along those lines.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the news stories we do, they're actually kind of, like you said, demonstrating journalistic concepts or examples of good journalism, but doing it by telling you the opposite of what should be done. Like one of the examples I can think of is in episode 3, there's a news story from McDonald's. And that's very similar to a concept in news called a VNR, or a video news report. And basically what this is a company that, manufactures widgets. They'll just send a completely produced news package to a news station where the talent there will just have to plug in a couple lines and its gravy. So I kind of I did that whole McDonald's story, and I'm going to be returning to it in season 2 to kind of highlight that fact that, you know, that's a case of bad journalism. You know, we also really dive deep on, you know, how television is, or how TV news is funded, and the complications that can arise from that. Like, you know, if you have to report on a sponsor, how do you do it positively or negatively? That sort of thing. So you know, we take, or you know, like the editorial, the Fakist editorial from season 4. It's all about Paul got bad service at a restaurant and was an asshole and got kicked out, and he makes
4?
Yeah, episode 4.
We're not on season 4 yet.
Yeah, sorry.
we got a ways to go.
But
no, that's the gag. Every episode's a new season.
Oh gosh.
Oh geez, that's a lot more work on my part.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just kind of taking these concepts of what good journalism is, and then Paul does the complete opposite almost every time, and kind of trying to teach it that way. You know, and a lot of times, Leanne's kind of the conscious of the show, and she'll jump in and be like, Paul, should you really be doing this? And Paul's like, yeah, whatever. And then it all ends horribly for him. So.
Well, that's the thing I tend to enjoy. I think ultimately is that, and anyone, and by the way, anyone chime in at any point in time if they have a comment to anything said. I know we're still producing a bit, but feel free to kind of jump in. Don't be shy, because I think it's ultimately the show and what I like about it, a listening part of it, kind of why I enjoy being a part, especially now in this weird actual news climate where you actually have fake news that's being broadcasted as real, and you have not like there's always a joke that's been like the Onion is becoming more true every day, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I actually derive a lot of inspiration for the stories from the Not the Onion subreddit, which takes stories that you would think would totally appear in the Onion, but no, they're actual headlines.
God, it's frightening. But what I like about it, and what's interesting, is a lot of the Fakist, I feel, and you talked about it in terms of journalism, but a lot of it is becoming even commentary on media. Like I think we're talking earlier about the Mr. Rogers one in terms of voice acting, and what I like about that is that you even make a little bit of commentary on Twitch and that audience and things like that.
Oh yeah, it's always whenever I'm going through and writing a story, I try and find like little cultural touch points that'll kind of pinpoint the project to this point in time. Because I mean, you know, the themes are universal, the format is kind of a new, but it's also kind of universal. It could exist at any time. So I definitely try and pull little things, references like that, or references to Logan Paul or vaping, all that kind of stuff, to try and set it in the here and now.
Vaping. Oh my God. Never have me do anything vape.
Okay.
Write
a story for Roberto about vaping. Got it. Cool.
Did I ever tell you the weirdest thing of vaping? I think it was you were talking about like modern day culture and things like that. I think the weirdest thing I experienced vaping was, and I do have this because I had to try it and buy it. It's essentially a vape caffeine pen.
I've heard of those. Do they work?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I tried it and it was weird and wrong, and I felt paranoid. So maybe that was maybe it was caffeine, maybe it was something else.
Was in it.
Well, because that's the thing, is that the way they described it, and this is what's such a weird idea, was that it was like it was like there's this many dosages, and if you take, you know, and they never explained like you take this kind of hit, you take this kind of puff, whatever. It's just like no, it's this whatever, and it's 2 cups of coffee. I'm like, okay. And I take, you know, whatever the proverbial hit off of the pen, and I'm like, oh, it's a vape pen, because I realized what it was. I didn't know what the heck was going to happen, and I inhaled it. I'm like, and then after I was done and kind of blew out and did whatever, I'm like, I kind of feel on edge, and I don't feel that good anymore. And usually that kind of caffeine doesn't do that to me.
You know what? That might have not been caffeine. I've heard of this before. It's out on the streets right now. It's called ultra weed. It's weed that gets you high and energized. It's weird.
Oh, if only.
It's like a hillbilly speedball.
So we should put. I'm just now laughing. That I think that's what. How do I transition from that to that? Anne Marie, how do you deal with this on a day-to-day basis?
Coffee? A lot of coffee?
We owe Anne Marie a debt of gratitude. This project would not exist without Anne Marie because, one, she's a person for me to bounce all my ideas off of. We can be, laying in bed, falling asleep, or waking up at 6 a.m. I'll be like, oh, about the Fakist.
Yeah.
She's also my main beta reader. Basically, every script that I send out before it gets sent out, it goes through her.
And every podcast before it goes live goes through my ears.
Yeah.
So he's always calling me over to like, hey, listen to this. I'm like, listen, if you make me listen to it now, when you give me the whole episode, I'm not going to hear that part because I'll have already heard it 16 times. So stop calling me over if you want me to QC this.
So I guess I should ask, because we're going to kind of move into behind the scenes stuff, only because you piqued my interest. Anne Marie, what's the worst line that Bill's tried to either bounce off you or concept or sketch?
Oh.
They are, even one that you remember of recently, you're like, yeah, that would have been a bad idea.
It can also be something we produced.
I was about to say it's going to be something we produce.
Even better.
I believe you wanted me to do it, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Uh-huh.
Do you know which one I'm going to say?
I know exactly what you're going to say.
And the people who did this one did a great job with it.
They did.
The full release technique. Couldn't do it.
It's basically sort of a late night infomercial commercial about masturbation. So.
and you wanted your wife to do this, and we recorded for all
because
eternity.
I didn't
infamy.
Because I was afraid to ask anybody else. Because I was
that's what it was. That is what I get. Those are my characters. I don't want to ask anybody else to do this. Can you please do this one? And I think I even tried to record it, and I was like, I can't do this.
But our good friend Shalane from Cost Commotion recorded it, and she did a great job. And
amazing job. I could not do that.
Well, let's go around the horn if anyone else has one. Let's start with Bobby. Has there been anything in producing, either lines you've had to have or productions that were pitched to you that you could not do?
The Mr. Rogers one, but I mean, I kind of, I've done everything he's thrown at me. I haven't refused,
See, and you better not.
I have a trump card on that one.
There's definitely been times where I'm like, and that's what I mean when I said earlier that he's made me step outside my comfort zone. That there's been times that I've been like, I don't know why he's asking me to do this.
Okay, when was that? What was the one moment where it's like, I don't know why he's asking me to do this? They're just the first
time when he sent me line.
The first line. We want you to read for this helicopter pilot.
Yeah,
here are the lines.
I mean, and to be honest with you, performing is something that I have like when I was a kid, I was in plays and different things like that, and performing is something that I've kind of always been kind of like in the back of my mind. So I'd be lying if I didn't say I was intrigued when he asked me, but I still kind of like thought in the back, not in the back of my head. That was in the back of my head. What I was thinking forward in the forward of my head was, why the hell is he asking me to do this? I don't, what does he see or hear in me to think that I'm going to do something? And the first voice with Birdman Stan, there was a bit more of like a back and forth with us of like, he kind of helped me find that voice, but then every voice since then has just kind of been like, hey, do this.
To be fair, Bobby, if you ever want to record with me, feel free. Because I've actually this season, as I've been producing season 2, I've been recording with more people because they're people I'm giving bigger parts to who have only recorded like 2 or 3 lines before. And I found it's very helpful. Before this season, I had just recorded live with Rebecca and Anne Marie. But yeah, if you ever want to record live, feel free.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm happy that it's worked out because I would not have foreseen myself doing anything like this.
I think right now we should interrupt Bobby. And we should all give him a hand for his performance as Birdman Stan, because he was the glue of season 1 for sure.
I appreciate that,
especially as the ghost version.
And that was my favorite episode.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a good
That
one.
was the Christmas, the Christmas episode was my favorite episode to record. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how season 2 comes together.
Yeah, me and Anne Marie were talking about the Christmas episode a bit earlier, and I was, because I was listening back to the best of before I release it later on today, and I was listening to it, and I was like, you know what? I think especially like the last 10 or 15 minutes of this episode is my favorite thing we've done on the Fakist, and that's the one episode that doesn't really have a fake news story in it, which I thought was kind of interesting.
For sure. It's funny because I was thinking back to like the weirdest thing. Like for me, I always found myself when it came to reading any lines is if I was reading a line for something, I would read the lines around it, even if they weren't part of my roles, just because I needed somebody to say those lines. So I knew this is happening then, this is happening now, and this is where I say my voice. Whatever that voice is, whether it be announcer or am I the only one that's ever spoken Japanese in the show so far? Even in the butchered format I've done, or has anyone else spoken Japanese?
I think it's just
yeah,
yeah,
definitely,
it's just you.
Definitely.
That's great. I'm glad to know that's probably the strangest moment for me is Bill giving this line. Hey, could you read this? I'm like, okay, sure. Not knowing what to expect. Like the script, like, oh, I'm reading Japanese for like a brief moment in time. I'm like, watashi wa. Like I have to like get my head wrapped around again of saying Japanese words. Quick tip to anybody who doesn't know how to read Japanese or can't pronounce it. All the vowels are pronounced the same like they are in Spanish.
Interesting.
There's your interesting note. But let's
That
move on
sounds like real stuff, Roberto. Get away.
This is the fake news.
No, this is important. This is the truth on the fake news. On the Fakist. What about you, Rebecca? What has there been any moments either that stick out of your mind in terms of production, in terms of even episodes that have been your favorites and whatnot?
Oh, my favorite?
Yeah, let's go with that.
My favorite was working on that Christmas episode because I got to play two characters. It was kind of the same character, but in a different way. I played Leanne, and then I played sort of the ghost of Christmas Future, which basically was Leanne with some sound effects put on top of her. But I did have to I tried to lower my voice and sound a little demonic, which is very different from my personality. I had to damn someone to hell. So that was very different from from what I normally do. I don't normally do that. So that was
only on Saturdays.
Only on Saturdays. So that was pretty fun for me. It was a real stretch for me to play a version of the character like that. And it was funny because that ghost still had a lot of humor to her. I don't know. So I had a really good time playing the kind of sarcastic version of the Ghost of Christmas Future. So I really enjoyed that one. In terms of, I know Bobby was talking about sort of the struggles and some of the things that, you have to go through to kind of work out the parts and all that. And Bill does have me in season 2 doing a lot of alliterations, and it can be difficult. Because just sometimes when you read it and then you try to get out the words, sometimes it doesn't work. But that's been a lot of fun to kind of work through, especially since in the premise of season 2, Leanne is sort of struggling to find herself as an anchor. And so that my mistakes sort of play into the part. So that helps me out a lot. And in season 1, there was a lot of me having to, I think one time I had to like fake vomit. I had to fake cry a couple times, especially when Birdman Stan died. That was a very emotional episode. A lot of fake tears. In season 2, I have to faint. So it's a lot of, and there was an episode in season 1 where there was an attack of cats in the studio, and so there was a lot of sound effects I had to do in addition to Leanne on the the headset or Leanne talking to Paul. It's a lot of sound effects, having to make those things happen, and sometimes that's difficult for me to be able to make myself a sound effect. But it's been fun to try.
I mean, Foley work is always is a challenge, especially when it comes to like radio, because radio and yet podcasting, is in that sphere. It's all about theater of the mind stuff. Like I always think about like BBC's production of all the Hitchhiker's Guide adaptations to radio as like some of the prime examples of how to do that kind of stuff. And I always, that to me has always been the challenging part. Saying a voice is one thing. And keeping that voice consistent also is part of that challenge too, but then adding into that mix, how do you verbally express like cats attacking you. Like,
yes.
because you have to describe, because again, the idea is you have to describe the scene, like, because no one can see you, no one can see it visually, so you have to say like, oh my god, this cat's scratching me on my head, oh crap, it's teeth, oh what, and then kind of getting in that moment of how do you convey that, and then realize that you have to do it over the top for it to even be kind of funny. Oh
yeah, you have to play it up a little more than you think you do, and so I think the editing helps me out personally a lot. I listen back to the finished product. I'm like, wow, that sounds a lot better than I thought that sounded in my head. So the editing helps me out a lot, but I think I'm maybe getting a little bit better at it, but it is something that I'm still having to really think about when I do it. So it's been fun to experiment with that kind of thing.
I'll interject here real quick. 2 points based on what Rebecca said. One, those alliterations are carefully crafted to create chaos, and I'm glad they do. And 2, I've only had 3 people tell me that the Fakist made them cry, and all of them told me it was because of your performance in the Christmas special. So you should be really proud of that.
That can't be right.
No, we actually have a review on iTunes that says that, and then I have 2 other people who have told me that personally. So
wow.
You did a great job in that episode, Rebecca.
Well, I'm so thankful and happy that I made someone tear up. That's a great accomplishment for my life.
Congratulations, you made someone cry, Rebecca.
You sadist.
I'm sorry.
You damned someone to hell and you made them cry.
I'm about to say, yeah, like that's already happened now.
Oh, no.
Now we see what kind of person Rebecca Johnson really is.
I've made a huge mistake.
I'm
that
done.
every
I'm
day.
leaving production. I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. I'm out. Find somebody different. All right, Wynn. What about you? What has happened? What the heck was that?
I was playing with my
wedding ring,
and it fell off.
This is my life.
Sorry, I was like trying to get into a serious moment here. And did Bill just like? Oh, sorry, I was just playing. I'm bored to play with my ring.
This is why the Fakist is scripted, because I'm a jackass and I ruin it.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Wynn. It's your turn.
Yeah, Wynn. Well, either favorite moments, worst or hated. Those basically. Because when it comes to production, like everyone has their like the memory that sticks out to them. Like with me speaking Japanese, other people with a Christmas story. Like, what's your moment in terms of the Fakist as at least season 1 that sticks out with you so far?
Well, one of the most fun scenes was when Birdman, Stan, and Grace are in a crashing helicopter. That was a very fun scene to record. And the most challenging line I had in season 1 was playing the part of a little toddler who is upset because they got their finger bit.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah. Obama bit my finger. Yeah.
Yes.
What has been like the challenging part of working with a cast and crew and people that send lines, not only from different parts of the world and whatnot, but different mic qualities and like audio quality and things like that?
Challenge is the right word. Yes. But I try and do some groundwork before we start. Like generally when I cast somebody, I have this doc that I wrote up about how to record good audio, even if you only have an iPhone. And, it's basically go in a closet and hold the iPhone about here and don't breathe on it too much. But, so I try and kind of hit that on the front end. But even though I do that due diligence, there's a lot of variety. So, I'd say the first 20% of any edit for any of these stories is kind of going in there and trying to make all these disparate audio clips sound like they're from the same world, or figuring out a way to justify making them sound like they're from different worlds. So that is very challenging. I'd say, it sometimes on the Fakist, if you hear a scene that I don't know if that really needs music, that might be the reason. Because we are dealing with people like me and Anne Marie who have and Rebecca and Bobby who have professional microphones, to anywhere down to someone who's recording on a phone, or Donna War, who's joining the cast this season. She records on an old like micro cassette recorder that you would use to record a lecture. But it comes out great. But some of the best stuff I've done, I think, has been actually recording in the room with people. Like Bobby and a guy named Tony who plays Byron Seals, and Monica, they along with our friend Liz, who played Cindy McNeil in the first episode, They took over the Greetings from Storybrooke podcast for us. And when Once Upon a Time was ending, they all came over to our house for a big party / final live stream, but it wasn't quite final because we had a lot of tech issues.
We had some terrible tech issues.
But
It was awful.
one of my favorite moments working on the Fakist was definitely when they were all there and we recorded the Lunch Place rap, the Madame Capral's Lunch Place rap, all together in the same room. I think, although maybe Rebecca wasn't there, but everyone else was. And it was just like this really cool thing where, like, you know, being able to be there and coach Tony to get him up and going and everything, and then
fantastic.
jump in with some stuff from Paul. And, you know, with Dean and Shalane DeMars from Casa Commotion, I've been able to actually go over to their place a few times because they played the Bieber Babies All Grown Up. Let's see, Dean played Jim Ward from the Christmas special. But I've actually been able to just go over there and hang out for a couple hours and take our time. And I think in the next season, I want to do more of that. Like, I'd love to either get on Skype or in the room with people more, because I just think it generally makes for a better product. Although, I mean, people deliver great stuff now, but there on occasion there'll be like one line that they do that is really good by itself, but when you put it next to another line from somebody else, it just feels off. Like someone's like super happy and someone's like terrified, and it's kind of hard to make it match up. Sometimes I'll have to ask them if they can re-record one line or something like that. But overall, it's been really good. I will say that one of the hardest things too is just, you know, right now this is a passion project. It's a project of love, not of money too much. So it's really hard to kind of like, hey, that deadline was yesterday, when they're doing it for free out of the kindness of their heart because they think you're a friend or they like what you do. They think you're your friend and you're completely lying to them. Or, you know, they like the product and they want to be a part of it. So that's hard sometimes from a production standpoint, but that's a minor gripe. You know, I've done different projects like this in the past. You know, back when I was 18, before podcasting was a thing, I sort of did a sketch comedy podcast. It was really just an MP3 I uploaded to a GeoCities site called Meeks FM. And it sucked. It was awful. And then, you know, about 10 years after that, I did a show called Old Wide Web, which was an educational show about the history of the internet. But it had sort of this element to it where it was like, you know, theater of the mind, radio drama, kind of presentation of these historical facts.
I was a computer.
You were a computer. And then, you know, 10 years after that, we stumble on the Fakist. And I think, you know, even though this is a concept I've tried out several times before, I think it had to wait until 2018, 2019 before it could be a realistic, both because of technology, connectivity, people's savvy in recording their voice in a good quality, and just the fact that I didn't have very many friends until a couple of years ago. So it all kind of coalesced for me.
That was it. 'Cause again, I was listening back and like, okay, that's definitely a headphone microphone. That's some other microphone. That's a professional microphone. That's a professional one. Because you can surprisingly get some good audio out of an iPhone mic if you just hold it upside down, kind of point into it. You can get some really high quality. I'm actually kind of impressed sometimes.
You know what I end up having to do more than anything, more than having to improve people's audio quality. Sometimes I'll have to take someone who has really good audio quality, like Rebecca or Bobby or me or a lot of other people, and I'll have to kind of intentionally degrade it. Actually, the preset I have for that, Wynn, you'll appreciate that. For degrading audio quality, it's called the Hoover Stafford. Because I originally created it to treat your audio, and your audio comes in fine, and it just made it a little bit better. But I found that applying it to really shitty audio does wonders for it. So I'm constantly using the Hoover Stafford.
Awesome.
The Hoover Stafford.
I love that name, by the way. That's
Such a good name.
Thank you.
All the names are good overall. I realize we're going longer, but just like it's again weird for me. Like I don't have a name. I'm but like I don't even know what I am. I guess announcer is a term, but like it's
announcer, reporter.
Yeah, I again, I guess everybody in the staff, and that's kind of what you learn when it comes to sort of passion projects is that everybody is everything. I always remember like the stories that Kevin Smith would talk about when it came to Clerks was that it became less about like at the beginning of the whole thing, he had like everybody was there, and then like by like the end of the project, you only had like 10 people because they realized what work it took and what it took to either do things. And even though yes, passion project things like that, we're still having to give lines on time and still having to make sure you get everything, and then you have to fit them all together to make some type of cohesive package out of it.
Yeah, that's the hard part is, kind of hitting the self-imposed deadlines, because these things are a very heavy lift as far as, everything from writing the script to editing to organizing the cast and all that stuff. And one or two key people not sending their lines back in time can completely throw things out of whack. Something else that can throw things out of whack is being in a horrific scooter accident, which happened last year, which almost completely killed, because originally the first
it did not almost kill him.
Yeah.
As it sounded like he was going to say. It was not that bad.
Originally, the first season was supposed to be 10 episodes. And because I got in that scooter accident, it put me behind a couple weeks, and I just wasn't able to hit that mark. So I decided to just kind of wrap it up for the season with Birdman Stan's death, do the Christmas special, and then come back this year. But, that's something you live, you learn. Thankfully, you live. You learn, and I've adjusted the production schedule now to where last year I think I had the first 3 episodes done. This year I have the first 4 episodes done, and by the time the second episode drops, I hope to have the 5th episode done. So it's just a matter of trying to stay ahead of that and not let it kill you, which is aided extremely by people getting their lines in on time. Actors.
I love how it's never pointed at me of like these 3 are great. You, however, I'm kidding. I don't think I've missed a deadline yet. That's my own internal goal, like to not miss a deadline if asked. Especially it's like, here are 3 words to say. I'm like, okay, I should be able to give me 3 words as quick as possible, because that's sad that I don't. And usually it's like, fuck, I got to do those lines. Let me get the microphone. I do have a decent mic. I hope
that's what it's like when we record.
Yeah.
He's like, I need to go edit this. And he's like, we haven't recorded our lines. I'm like,
that's another benefit of the Skype session is that, you record it when you schedule the session.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It is helpful.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day,
I get it. We're going to do a Skype session next time, I promise.
Well, Bill, that's how real voice acting works, is that you schedule it, you record
This is fake voice acting.
That's true. That's very true.
The fake
voice acting.
But in all seriousness, I've had a lot of fun, and I really can't wait to hear how season 2 comes together.
I might know somebody who can send you an early release episode.
And that
I almost like hearing it when it drops.
When it drops.
Because like all I get are like the pieces that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I like you said, I kind of get a bit of like the main, like, the Leanne and Paul and whoever I'm playing at that, whatever season it is. But I don't like get a whole lot of, with the exception of like Handlebar Van Dyke, I don't know a lot about what's going on.
A character coming up in season 2, Handlebar Van Dyke.
Even that, like I'm just anxious to see how that gets pieced together. Like what you used of what I sent you.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. It's really good. Maybe I'll send it to you tonight. I really enjoyed that one. It's interesting though, because I send out generally these cut downs of the scenes for people just for the sake of clarity, because I think maybe the first episode I sent out like the entire section that they appeared in, and people were getting confused. They were like, I have 3 lines in here, why did you send me the whole thing, what's going on? And I thought maybe it'd be better if I send out like a paragraph and just the lines they have, just for clarity. Mm-hmm. I think the only people who really get to review the entire script before the episode comes out, Anne Marie, that we already talked about, and Rebecca, especially because Leanne's becoming a much bigger part of the show in season 2. I send her the full script as well, so she has full context for everything.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I have so much fun when Bill sends me the script, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a new Fakist. What's going on? I'm like a fan of the show, so I enjoy getting to read it and find out what happens.
And it's also good to have, like you were saying, Bill, to have the lines for context, just to know what I'm saying. And in kind of like you were saying, there's so many people sending you so many different recordings, one person might be saying it in an excited tone, one person might be saying it in, a different tone. So
Yeah.
it's good to have the context of what you're talking about, not just the lines.
Mm-hmm.
That's also why I send you like 3 or 4 different readings of the line or whatever when I send you the lines.
Yeah, and I always appreciate it when people do that. When you get to the editing space, the more options you have, the better. Because that way, if one thing sucks, if 2 things sucks, the third thing works great, then you can just go with the third thing,
Is there any chance that we'll see Birdman Stan again?
Well, I will say that, last year we did a Christmas special. This year we're going to do a Halloween special. So he might show up as a skeleton or something. You never know.
All you have to do is write the Birdman Stan Paranormal Investigators sketch.
There you go. That's
Done. Write it.
Stan
I'll write
Busters.
it.
Just Stan Busters.
Oh, God. See, I was thinking more of the idea of having the Stan AI.
We already.
Yeah.
Did I already touch on something that existed? Holy crap! I did that as a joke, and that actually is a joke.
You're completely wrong, but you're really close to being right.
Yeah,
Yes.
very close.
I'm like, wow,
like a talking helicopter with Stan's voice.
Bill, what can we expect from season 2?
Season 2. It's canceled. It's not happening. I did not have the bandwidth to do anything for it. I've been sending out these scripts. I hired someone on Fiverr to write. And
Finally, the
Truth comes out.
No, I think season 1 ends on kind of a hopeful note. Paul's kind of realized he's a total asshole, and he's going to go and try and fix it. So season 2 is really all about that, and about Paul discovering the power of other people in collaboration. And, to kind of reinforce that, one of the things we're doing with season 2 is, season 1, it was all me, like, hunched over here at 3 o'clock in the morning, drinking a beer, writing a script. For season 2, we're actually bringing in outside writers. 2 of them are on this chat here. Wynn is going to be writing a story for her character. Gray's super staffer, Anne Marie, wrote a Deborah Dawnstar commercial.
But see, the thing is, Grace's is actually good. Mine had to be like completely rewritten. He's like, okay, so we're going to take your idea and I'm just going to massage it into something good.
To be fair, I did a little massaging on everybody's. I mean, yours took a lot more. But
And it was only a commercial. But yes, Grace's is much better.
No, but definitely that. I think, when editing the best of, I had to re-listen to the first episode. And I just think, over the course of the first season, the production quality got so much higher that I think we're going to be doing some even more really cool things with, sound effects and theater of the mind kind of stuff in season 2. I'll also say that some of my favorite moments from season 2, I'll try and say this without being too spoilery. Tom Merritt from the Daily Tech News Show is back as the son of his former character, and it's a story you can't miss. It's all about the last blockbuster.
It's fantastic.
And then I mentioned Power Rangers for Real is going to be a really good one. And really past that, I think Janitor Jim's story, Bobby's character, newish character, he's had a few lines before, but he's going to be a major character this season, is really going to kind of blow the lid off this motherfucker, so to speak.
Okay.
I look forward to the Power Rangers for Real, if nothing more than I really hope that you had to do a little bit of a deep dive on Sentai culture and things like that.
Absolutely. And I'll say somebody who may or may not live in the most famous house in Washington, D.C. is a very big fan of Super Sentai, but not Power Rangers.
There's so much mystery there and things like that. But honestly, this has been a blast. So Bill, Anne Marie, Bobby, Wynn, Rebecca, thank you all for being on and letting me kind of, Bill, I wanted to say thank you for letting me be even but a small part in this project. Even though, the beauty part about my voice is that you hear it and no one knows who it is, which is probably like the best thing I could ask for, is I can cloak in a very weird way, because it sounds so weirdly foreign to me, and way more radio than I want it to sound, but I love it nonetheless.
Well, when I was thinking about who do I want to interview me to make me look really, really good? Who has done that in the past and succeeded, kinda? And it was Roberto. Every time, Roberto.
Well, thank you all for joining us today as we talk to the cast of The Fakist and crew, I guess, in this case as well. Tune in next time for actually a regularly scheduled fake news stuff as opposed to this real truth thing that we've somehow stumbled into. I forget what my announcer name is. Do I actually? I don't even think I have a name.
It's announcer.
I'm just announcer.
Yeah.
This is Roberto Villegas, also known as the announcer, signing off. I don't know. Seems weird. It just seems weird. Like, that still boggles my brain. Just like how much fucking bass is in my it just sound like I said. It's like you took like it's me. It's if me and like the announcer at the monster truck rally like combined, and then like you took the Truckzilla knob and like turned it to 12.
Oh, I turned it to 14 in the Wacky Packy commercial that's coming up soon.
Oh, Wacky Packy. Oh, forgot about that one.
That's a Deborah Dawnstar.
That's a Deborah Dawnstar. Dawnstar. It's like magic.
Until next time.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Subscribe to The Fakist on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or your favorite podcast app by going to thefakist.com. You'll get every episode when we release it. That's Fakist with an I. See you next time.